Well, this is the Poker Talk podcast. My name is Michael Lockey. I'm here with Frank Spalding, and my buddy JB is joining us. JB, how you been?
I'm doing really. It's good to have my voice heard. So thank you.
I'm going to value this as a time capsule at bare minimum. I do want to ask, like, how has your health been? It's like not the easiest question to ask about, but I know there was some complications for a while. I feel like there's been some good news, but I want to make sure I have the full story.
Yeah, let me start. And in 1 month, I'll be a 10-year survivor of brain cancer. And I was originally diagnosed with a glioblastoma. And so I'm beating all the odds. And so the glioblastoma wasn't a misdiagnosis, but I will say 2 years ago, I had a recurrence. And when they looked at the biopsy again, they found out it was actually a high-grade astrocytoma with pyloid features based off the new designations from the World Health Organization. So I don't have something as dire as they once thought. Glioblastoma is the worst of the worst. But also what they found in that 2 years ago was I have leptomeningeal metastasis, which is like a very terminal complication for cancers and brain cancer, especially. It's when the tumor cells expand to the fluid lining of the brain. But through all the treatments I've been on over the years, and then for the last 2 years with all the chemo and stuff, within months, there was basically no evidence of disease, which is like almost never happens with this kind of stuff. So I'm beating the odds, and my fight with brain cancer, which is just like, I'm an anomaly. The way I put it the other day was, in the poker game of life, I'm on my third buy-in, basically.
You're a walking miracle.
Everything's going good with me. Yes, and I don't take it for granted. There's a lot of other brain cancer patients who go through what I have, and it comes to a sad end, unfortunately. These are very like terminal diagnoses. Like when somebody with a glioblastoma would make it like a year and a half, which it turns out I didn't have that, but I was beating the odds with what we thought that was. But with what I do have, about half people make it to 5 years, but I'm beating the odds with that as well.
Impressive.
And then with the leptomeningeal spread, most people make it a few months. If they're lucky, they'll make it like several months after that. But you rarely hear more than like a year, and I'm 2 years out. So yeah, everything's going good health-wise. I'm pretty good. I'm trying to get back in the gym, trying to stay active. But yeah, that's
incredible story.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Congrats to you. It's just it's an honor to even know you and hear these stories. It's when you get to know somebody early on in your life, you kind of branch off, and even though we have a lot of overlapping hobbies, and we're going to get I'm curious about what are some of your earliest memories of meeting me, but when you have these hobbies and stuff, it's still like, even you would come to South Florida sometimes when I would live there, and we had a lot of mutual friends. It's still, there's just so many points of friction that make it hard to stay as fully connected as you'd like and be in touch and all that jazz. So, in a lot of ways, I'm just really thankful that, we can connect here, and, it's just good to see you, man. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, same to you. It's awesome to see the path you've taken through poker as well. To bring up the memories, it was like, yeah, I think I first met you at a private game at USF, just like a little home game we played together with some friends, and then we became friends through that. And then like I think we even like you sweated me play an online session
for sure. It was that was one of my. I was just telling Frank, it might have been last night or today. Like, I remember hanging out with you in your room at your apartment or whatever, and you were 4-tabling 3-6 no limit or something to that effect. And at the time, like, we're talking like 2005, right? We're talking I was not even 21 years old yet. I was able to gamble in Florida because it was only 18 plus. I would go to the Hard Rock and whatnot, but we were very young at the time. And to see somebody playing a game, but playing it with confidence, playing it strategically, playing it, you might not have thought you were the best player in the world, but you probably thought you were the best player roughly, or at least a small winner at the time. So it was really neat to stumble upon somebody playing with leverage, right? You're playing multiple tables all at once. You're playing reasonably, you're playing larger buy-ins than what were available even to our local casino at the time. And it was all just like, oh, wow, this is just like the very beginning of what this could be.
Exactly. And yeah, like you said, I think I was playing either 2-4 or 3-6 on party poker, and I must have been just like 18 or 19 at the time. And I mean, I was still really learning at that exact time. I was still really learning how to like, you know, do proper exploits and cash games and stuff like that. But I was like I was a winner at the time, and like building up a bankroll, which at such a young age, I felt like I was on top of the world. Like to have like I think when I hit like 50,000 in my accounts and stuff like that, I was just like, oh my god, like what's going on?
Yeah.
But so that was pretty
And
cool.
who
Yeah,
knew how rare those times would actually end up being, you know, like I talk to people all the time, like, yeah, I had a lot of really amazing years, but every single year it got a little bit harder. I had to put a little more hours in. My bankroll requirements like strictened by a little bit each year for a variety of reasons. So poker becomes difficult in that sense, but you know, once you're extracting, it's like it's so easy to feel like it's just going to be that way forever too.
For sure. Like I was out of poker, well, especially the last 10 years with my brain cancer stuff, I kind of really stepped aside from poker. I still dabble a good amount, but it's like the game certainly has evolved. Like the standard, like thought of like even like the most base players like gotten more complex and stuff.
For sure.
Um, so you have to keep up. And so it's like I might have been ahead of the curve way back then, but then like I feel like I've kind of have fallen a little bit behind the curve, especially like going out yesterday and playing a little bit, and it's just like I can see how the game's evolved.
One of the things that like really stood out to me for my intentions for this conversation, right? So like funny, I actually asked you to call me last night, but I didn't realize you were literally gonna instantly call me. I wanted to really get with you because I could easily see you being nervous here and feeling, oh, I'm not caught up. I'm behind. Oh, everybody's bluffing me. I'm getting exploited. But I just need to get as much of that out of your head as I can, and also like remind you they don't have any of the experience that you've had that all these years and all the games you've played in, and also it's like what actually is happening at the table is that people are just more confident in a very specific strategy that they're bringing. It's not necessarily that that strategy is light years ahead of what other strategies are.
That's fair to say. And I might be giving people too much credit in general. Like I think I can still hang, and I have studied a little bit enough to say that I can adjust. I can play in a way that's like I still have good reads. I can play in a way that's probably not going to get exploited too much, and I can pick up on what people are doing with their frequencies enough to be able to adjust to how the game.
These are expert level things that are not taught the same way that they used to be, right? So I want you to take a step back and imagine that you and I were hanging out in your apartment learning poker, right? Imagine what it would be like if you told me, oh no, there's only one correct way to play this hand, and it's exactly this way. And here's this, you know, AI solver that proves it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's the only way I can play poker. And then we spent years developing these absolute strategies that are, quite frankly, easily exploited if you're trying, right? So what I'm saying is that a lot of the exploits that were available in, let's say, the first half of our careers were people limped too much. People folded their big blinds to raises too much. People check folded the flop too much. People did the blah, 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 blah. But like we've had an inflection point in poker where now, you know, we've had annies in tournaments for long enough, right? So the incentives get built. Aggression just gets rewarded. It gets promoted in tournaments in ways that it doesn't in other formats. So now the solver really just, what it does is it teaches you to pick up crumbs on the ground. It doesn't really teach you to do much else in poker, right? It teaches you to overbet flops where it's hard for your opponent to interact with it and you can steal it there more often. It teaches you to overbet rivers where it's hard for your opponents to have the types of hands that can call and hold on in certain spots, right? But these are not necessarily the only exploits available. And in a lot of times, almost every situation is increasing your variance over other options, right? So you're increasing variance, you're increasing aggression, and like, sure, all that works. And you might even find microscopic EV pieces here and there, but a really educated live pro is still going to have a massive advantage because the model that they're building their mental database of hands off of is often computer driven and not at all adding all of the extra information you get from a live game. Your base decision making comes from, oh, the guy was getting a massage and he spilled his chips while he was trying to grab his raising chips and he raised bigger than normal. Right? You're like, oh, well, maybe I don't need to 3-bet this guy with ace 5 suited here. Just like maybe I just need to not take this spot, right? But some of your opponents are going to take this spot every time because they believe that there's only this one way to extract chips in all situations, right? So the live pro element is probably as big as ever, which that absolutely was not true for a while, right? There was a point in time where the best of the best were all live pro driven and came from a base of, understanding everything interacts with your poker game. Now, a lot of the young upcomers are learning in ways, an easy example is, do you play the same strategy at 1-2 no limit as 2-5 no limit?
Well, do I? I haven't been playing enough, but
you shouldn't, right? That's a fair. I mean,
I would agree with that. You would,
right? So it's a base strategy of the output of your decision making in poker involves a lot of what is going on with your opponents, right? And so some of your opponents are going to be sophisticated, only interact with 2.2x raises. They're going to be 3-betting at exactly 23% frequency like they should be. And they're going to be having, quarter c-bet sizes, like quarter pot size c-bets, and they're going to have all this really strict rules for how they interact with the game. But, I don't know, they just bluff it off a lot too. And you can just find other ways to exploit those types of players. And what I've found with a lot of the students that I coach is because Doug Polk is so big and good and Faraz is so big and good and all these other coaches are so big and good that they just feel like everybody has all this information that they don't. And poker's never been that simple, and poker never will be that simple. It's a game of incomplete information where you have to use every single thing that you can to make the best decision you can right here, right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's another point to make to what you're saying is people will learn the concepts, but then they can easily misapply the concepts.
Yes, exactly.
Where it's oh, I'm going to go for an overbet here, and it's just well, that's not the right time, or
correct.
Whatever. Yeah, and also it's kind of interesting, and I just lost my train of thought. I had something there.
No worries at all. But even just branching off of what you said with overbetting, it's still I don't even want you to start believing that every overbet's a bluff either, right? There's still only a select few that have it in them to look at you on the river and place an overbet as a bluff. Most people just have it when they do that, right? And so, if you end up folding a few spots and get shown a few bluffs, that's actually not even you getting exploited. That's part of it is they're risking 2 units to win 1. That's part of the math problem when they overbet. And part of that is that's okay. You don't need to risk the 2 units to win the 3 units all the time. You don't always have 40% type of hand to call an overbet. So it's really just designing, it's just battle, counter battle, and all that jazz, but it can be simpler than what a lot of people make it out to be.
That's a good point. I know what I was going to say now before.
Yeah,
I remember back in the day when people would be discussing hands, and the big answer a lot of times it would be well, it depends, because it's not enough information was there. That's important to see, because there could be 5 or 6 different factors that are just going to each one could just change the hand dramatically. But more to that point is I remember back in the day, a lot of times I would just be well, I could go either way on that one. And the truth is, the solvers would find out that you do go either way on that one.
Yeah, exactly. It is a balanced spot, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So I always felt somewhat justified. I was oh yeah, I wasn't just bullshitting out. I really thought that at the time, and then it was oh, even the solvers would be yeah, you can mix it up there.
I agree with that, and yeah, a solver isn't all that different than what a hyper advanced human output is going to look like, right? I mean, when we dedicate our lives, Frank's actually the AI guy of this group, so I don't want to speak. I did think I get a nod of approval there, so I'll take it. But, it is, we've all been putting a lot of brain power in this. You know, I was mentioning 2+2 recently. That is a giant database of poker knowledge, right? And sometimes it gets off the rails and ends up in weird spots, but the meat of that poker forum was absolutely incredible when there was real, you know, players participating in it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Also, I just had a new train of thought, which is I think the biggest thing I need to do is like focus and rely on my like reads and intuition. Because like, for instance, yesterday I played a $200 tournament just as a warm up. And not to get into the whole hand, but basically I had ace king that I had 3-betted, and then a guy called 4-bet, and I knew he was going to be super nutted there. And I really should have just actually laid it down based on my read. But at the same time, I was frustrated in the tournament, down from starting stack. And I was just like, all right, let's just get it in. And then he had kings, which is like, I think he has aces.
And I could go either way, right? So immediately, like ace king is always going to be one of the hardest hands in tournaments. It's always a spot where like it looks terrible when you run into the top 2 hands. It always feels dumb, right? But you know, there's a reason why it's played that way, and it has enough equity in the flip situations, and sometimes it's dominating. And you know, that's always just the never-ending battle with ace king.
Yeah, and I might be like being results oriented with that one, but like, and I did have, I mean, ace king versus kings is still okay equity. I mean, but it's like, so it's like,
yeah, you're 30 is as good as it's going to get sometimes.
Yeah.
What was the turnout of the hand?
He ended up winning. He made the really solid statement of saying like, well, an ace is obviously going to come, which counter jinxes it. So it was a smart move by him.
Yeah, you're not superstitious. You're kind of stitious.
Exactly.
Which hotel are you staying in?
We went for a cheaper route, but it's close to the wind, so we're at Circus.
Nice, very nice.
They did get me with some extra charges. I thought it was a lot cheaper when I booked online, and then when I got here, it was like a couple $100 more because of
resort
like
fees
the hidden
stuck in there.
Yeah. Which is fine.
Vegas is not what it used to be, my friend. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about your day tomorrow. What time does the tournament start?
Actually, let's pause for one
Go
second.
ahead.
Why is he in Vegas right now?
Oh, yes.
We missed sharing that. I believe you're a winner of one of the golden passports that the WPT.
That's right. I won, and I think just through the random drawing I won through the club WPT Gold. I won a golden passport to the $5 million free roll, which is pretty. What a fun! This is like kind of like a once in a lifetime event in some ways.
Absolutely.
2,000 people. The seats probably valued, like if you were to evaluate it, it'd be like $2,500 based on the $5 million prize pool. But people are saying at least like a few hundred people might not even show up. So that raises your value a bit.
Yeah.
Plus,
definitely.
I mean, if you have an edge over, just like there's going to be a lot of amateurs here, is the thought. So, I mean, it could have an edge over the field and a lot of value there. So, plus, not to mention, you don't always get a chance at $1 million.
Sure.
So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's $1 million guaranteed first place. But that could potentially go up, though, as you said, as a lot of people don't show up. There's a lot of people who are winning passes that are like, oh, crap, now I got to get to Vegas.
Yeah, but I think so. I'm sure the fine print of this tournament's a little different than in other tournaments. So I'm assuming that they're going to make it easy on themselves to find alternate players that are allowed to get in and be part of that. So I'm assuming it'll get to 2,000, but even then, 500 have zero shot, like less than zero shot. Of the 1,500, you're probably in the upper 500, I would guess. So you got as good a shot as anybody. And I know one other player going, Hindi from Orlando. She's a tournament player that also won an entry. So I know at least 2 local players are going, and definitely going to root for you. So
sure.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I'll be trying my best. And what's crazy is, so my 2 friends staying with me, they through giveaways, they're from my hometown and they're relatives, but through the giveaways through Egyptian, they won each one a seat. So they're here with me and they're like my close friends.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Egyptian was doing some cool contests that they were able to win through that. So yeah, it's kind of
What is
random.
that?
But
I'm not
pretty
familiar
awesome.
with it.
You
Oh,
know,
Egyptian. He's a streamer, a poker streamer on Twitch, and I think he's an ambassador for probably WPT and stuff too. Maybe not entirely sure on that, but he was also he used to be a gamer, so for like, oh, if you beat me in Halo, do a separate drawing pool. And my friend is happens
See,
to be
this
a
is
professional
just
Halo.
this is a giant promotional tournament, and I love
Yeah.
this, right? So there has been a lot of flack on Twitter, grimy regs wanting their piece of the action, and like, sorry, bro, like the reality is none of these people are good for poker. They're just leeches, they're parasites. They come to extract, and every decision they make is about extracting. And like when you build a business, you realize that like the more you can avoid extractors and reward every other participant in the ecosystem, well, the net result is a much better ecosystem. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the entire network of participants. I'm proud of the WPT for putting it on. I think it's a really cool event. I'm glad you got a shot. I want to talk about tomorrow. So it starts tomorrow, right? Is that at noon,
Yes.
roughly?
AM our time out in Vegas. Yeah.
When I'm in Vegas, I like to plan everything. I got my dinner reservation planned. I got my breakfast planned. I've got, do I need Ubers? Who's taking the car? Where are we going? What's the exact? I might even know what I'm ordering like the morning before, the night before. I might know every single step of like what it's going to be. The reality is decision fatigue is real. So we got to give ourselves the absolute best shot to be making the best decisions we can when the day is at its end, when the most money's on the line, right? So I just got to stress, I get you're in Vegas and it's easy to just kind of go with the flow, but I've found the older I got, the more structure that I have, the less stress that I've had, especially during poker tournaments.
That's great advice. I'll definitely I'm gonna do that then. I'll be like
I would map everything out.
Yeah, for the day, starting in the morning. Well, and I'll get a good night's sleep and everything too. I'm on a good schedule sleeping wise, so yeah, I think I'll get my ducks in a row as far as that goes. That's good advice.
And if you need dinner reservations, I would pull up Open Table and I would make sure you get a reservation somewhere. It can be, you're only going to have, 60, 90, whatever the allotted time is for your dinner break.
60
Vegas
minutes.
can be stressful. So it's just really important. Like, you don't want to miss 15 minutes because you're late from dinner, right? So, this is where all the edges add up. And this is where I, when I take it really seriously, this is how I look at it.
Yeah. I don't even know if that's perfect advice. I might even go simpler with the food, and find something like quick and easy.
But you'll know what works for you, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, that's great advice. Cause like a lot of times breaks can be a little bit frantic if you don't know exactly what you're going to do.
Right. You don't want to start making the plans for breaks when the break, or even like 15 minutes away, you're like, oh shit, what am I doing? Right. Like, so
exactly.
A lot of times it's people don't always expect to be there at dinner break. Like, I'm sorry, I expect to be there. If I'm not there, that's okay. It happens, but I'm showing up expecting to be there.
Definitely. Yeah. And that'll be 8 hours and 45 minutes into it. So yeah, it's good to have that planned and snacks along the way if necessary.
Yeah, that's actually so. There's three regular breaks before the first dinner break.
Yeah,
that's
3 15-minute breaks. It's 30-minute levels, 4 levels, 15-minute break, 4 levels, 15. So yeah, there's 3 15-minute
levels.
30-minute levels. So 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours.
The reality is, JB, this is a turbo. Like, no matter how we want to frame it, this is a turbo. 30-minute blinds. It's not going to take too long. People are going to be busting before the first break for sure. After dinner break, it's going to be playing like a push. Honestly, your push fold might be your biggest advantage here. Playing a short stack, understanding your opponents, where they're not going to have, some of your opponents are going to be very weak here. Actually, I'm glad I thought this through, because in the early parts of the day, some of the amateurs they're going to be limping a lot. They're going to be calling a lot of hands. They're going to be looking to play because they're there. any amateur that's made it to like 1K, 2K blinds, they value it differently. They are literally pot committed to this whole tournament. So they change their priority structure to every single hand that I survive matters a lot because I'm so proud of myself.
That's a good point. And I think that does play to my strong suit. I don't know if you know this about my past, but I did grind a lot of sit and goes back in the day. And
I did remember that in hindsight. Yeah.
So I do know, and I obviously don't have every spot like memorized, but like I'm very familiar with playing like 10 big blind stacks, 15 big blind stacks, etc. So like that's,
and even when the spot's hard, right? Even when the spot's hard, right? Okay, it folds you on the button, and you've got King 6 offsuit, right? And there is some amount of blinds where that's a shove, and there's some amount of blinds where it's not. You're not going to mess it up by that much, right? You're just going to look at the two, you're going to add the live pro stuff. You're going to look at the two blinds. You're going to see if they want to look at their hand before you do. This is what I would recommend, right? Make sure if you're watching out of the corner of your eye, if they look at their hands early and they make it obvious they're interested, well, then maybe it's a fold, right? Maybe if they give that information away, you can step in and make a decision there.
Right. Also, just seeing how they've been playing, like if they're like tight players, and then it just
then you can just shove it into the tight players, and if they wake up with it, then so be it.
Exactly. Yeah, and then like the tricky part, I think, where it really gets for me is like when you're like around those stack sizes, the argument is sometimes like I always cover, but like the argument in some of those spots, but maybe a little bit deeper. But I think mostly I'll go with the shoving style, but like occasionally mix in some min races.
I think shoving is going to be more effective than usual in this tournament. Like for this field specifically, I think you may get like it may actually be like 2003 poker with some of your tables. So it might be you shove the button with ace 4 off for 8 bigs, and they fold ace jack suited and say nice hand, and you're like, okay. Like that. It might be some of that going on. So
I mean, I played a tournament, and this was a long time ago, but I had been out of poker for a while, and it was a live tournament, and we were in the money, and it folds to me. I have 9-10 on the button, 9 big blinds with an ante, and I knew they were playing tight, so I shove, and it's probably like not, it's like right on the edge maybe, but it's like seems like a reasonable shove.
It's not that bad if it is.
It would seem pretty standard actually to me at the time. But the big blind tanked for like over a minute and then called with ace 10. And I was like, whoa, if they're tanking with that, then that's definitely a shove.
Right, exactly. They never say when they're folding, really good hands, they shouldn't be like pocket sixes and shit.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm comfortable with those stack sizes and how to play. It's like, like you're saying, if I make a mistake by shoving a little too wide, it's just gonna be like a small mistake. But it might not even be a mistake because they're playing a little bit tighter. Because
of their play style, it's probably not even that a mistake if it is.
Yeah, true. I did want to bring up yesterday a little bit. So I was like making my way around the venue, and I do want to give a shout out to Ashley Sleeth, who is awesome. She's like one of their ambassadors, I think, or one of their employees. So she's been helping me with everything that's been going on. And I've been in contact with her about the travel stipend and stuff, but we're working on that, which is something else I won for this, which is pretty cool. Another different contest. That was cool. But so I just want to say their organization, their employees have been really great and really good. So I just want to give them a shout out. And
honestly, the WPT has always been the maximum top class organization throughout all of this. And, Matt Savage at the top, Tony Dunst, Mike Sexton, the list goes on and on of like the true class acts that are at the top.
Yes. And
I don't want to send me I was just going to say, if you want to send me a text after this with her contact info or her social media, and we'll include her in the show notes for a shout out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll try to do that. And but also going to name drop 2 other people that I ran into, and then one story after that to cover this. So I connected with a lot of different people through the poker world back in the day. Like I was kind of like, I felt like I flew too close to the sun, but I was like rubbing elbows with everybody, playing bigger.
I can relate. I can relate.
Yeah, because I mean, I played 25, 50 no limit online, biggest point, and with mixed success, we'll just say.
Yep.
But so basically, I was standing in line to register, and behind me was Jeff Madsen, and I've been Facebook friends with him forever, and I think we were just like briefly acquainted back in the day. And I was like, "Are you Jeff Madsen?" And he just sarcastically goes, "No." And then I like explained how I knew Jeff, and then like it was kind of a fun connection to make. Seemed like a nice guy. Barely like we.
I've been on both sides of that conversation where on one hand, like when, you know, I go to any Florida room, like it happened to me in Orange City this weekend, a place I had never been before at all. I'm playing these tournaments and I had a great time at the Moneymaker Tour. But some guy just comes up to me and just starts talking to me. He's like, "Oh, we played down south. We've been Facebook friends, blah blah blah," and just starts, you know, rattling on some stuff. And like it's fun, but like, you know, on one hand, I'm on my tournament break trying to relax and trying not to think about poker, but like I got to be this ambassador for this moment. So it's this balance of like, like I understand how Jeff feels this because you don't want to be a dick, but like it's hard to just be a personality just like and turning it on all the time, and like oftentimes it's not even worth it with the person that you're interacting with, and it's so frustrating. But obviously that's not the case with you. You're a wonderful human. I've actually had great interactions with Jeff in the past, so shout out to him for that.
He was a good sport, and then I messaged him later on Facebook like, "Hey, this is the crazy guy from before," and then he gave me like a bunch of like emojis and stuff and whatever. We had a good exchange. And then so like, but then I noticed as I was going to register, I noticed in front of me was also somebody who I was acquainted with and Facebook friends with, and I had like played with her. She's the nicest person. I know, like an important topic to her, but I won't get into more detail about her personal.
Who is her again?
Stuff.
I just
you cut off a bit there.
A very brief cutout.
Am I okay now?
Yeah, you're good now.
What was her name?
So Lonnie Harwood.
So Lonnie. I love Lonnie.
Yeah, she's awesome. And we probably hadn't seen each other in like 12 years, but then she did vaguely remember me and I brought up a few things. She's the nicest person ever. And I always wish her and her husband on and when they're playing in big poker tournaments and stuff.
Phil is amazing as well. Shout out to them. Their dad, her dad's cool as well. I mean, Scott, all of them are good people.
What I was hinting at was like, I believe, and I don't want to say her personal information, I believe a family member of hers had a fight with cancer. So I know it means a lot to her. So
I mean, your story is amazing. Like I can't say it enough. Like just knowing you has been an honor, and I hope you get to go for as long as the story gets to go for, my friend.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going. I also want to bring up this story. This story is highly amusing. So we were getting lost walking around the Wynn and the Encore, trying to find where to go, where everything was. I haven't been in Vegas from forever. My friend is like, he plays poker, so he's my friend that won a seat, but he hasn't really been through Vegas either. So we're sort of like, I say I'm Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and he's my spirit guide. So he's awesome because he's been helping me along. But we're really lost. But we keep asking directions. We find our way down. We're like, we think we're on the right path, and he sees us. Basically, he sees a sign. He's like, I think we're on the right path, and I'm like, and so I look up, and so I see something different, and I'm like, oh, we're on the right path. But he only sees the sign. But what I see is Phil Ivey walking right towards us. and then so after we walked by, I'm like, do you know who that was? And he's just like, no. I was like, oh, just the most iconic person in poker, pretty much. But yeah,
he probably had a hat on, right?
He would. Well, no, I don't even. He might have, but he was talking with somebody. Otherwise, I would have been like, "What up, Phil?"
Yeah, it's hard not to.
You don't want. I don't want to. Like you were saying before, you don't want to be the guy that just annoys everyone, because everyone's like so busy and doing things. So when I was talking to Jeff, I had that in mind, but at the same time, I'm like, I just want to say hi to anyone and everyone and be like, I'll be that guy that's kind of obnoxious that talks to the poker players.
And you should know that's, but I think part of the people that got invited to this thing are the people that are willing to talk to people that want, like, there's just a certain type of element to the people that are invited to this that I think is going to be special. I'm really interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely looking forward to some of the live content from this and some of the media coverage.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So I'm definitely looking forward to a lot of the live content and media coverage that comes out of this.
Yeah, and even Ashley Sleep said I might be able to. I mean, she brought it up, and I was like, I would be down to do it, to do like a video interview with them, just to briefly share my story. I can give a shout out to brain cancer, but also give a shout out to what an awesome job and what a great event this is. So I look forward to hopefully being a part of like their content. Also, I wanted to bring up, this is kind of like a personal thing and maybe an inspiration for me. A big thing for me is I talk to a lot of other brain cancer patients, and I used to be an ambassador for a medical device.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made a lot of friends along the way. And I was connected to this woman, Jenny Williams, years ago, and she helped me at this big event for the American Brain Tumor Association. And she like helped guide me through the event and stuff. And we were close. We were fast friends. She was awesome. She has what's called an oligodendroglioma, or as she called it, an oligo what, which I think is a funny take on it. And she has a very unique story, but in recent months, she had the complication that I had, but it's not going so well for her. She has the leptomeningeal disease. And I was able to, through my connections, put her in touch with some really cool comedians, Tig Notaro and Jim Gaffigan, who are awesome people. And they both got to meet her and have cool conversations, and they were hilarious to her. And I think it kind of really made her day, if not, more. And so shout out to them. But then the day before I came to travel here, her husband called me and said she was going on hospice. So I kind of want to dedicate anything for this tournament to her and the brain cancer community. Yeah, so
we'll definitely pray for her.
We knew this was coming, but I don't know. I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what this is for, my friend.
You help lift her spirits and make her day. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, there couldn't be a better person than her. She doesn't deserve what's happened, but that's the way with her.
Yeah.
Cancer really affects everyone. So.
Yeah, cancer is brutal. There's no doubt about it.
There's a lot of things to say, and it's like, when it comes to like my story too, cancer is a word, not a sentence, which is like kind of a powerful thing. It like doesn't basically tell the whole story, and it's not necessarily a death. I think that's a powerful thing to say. But yeah, I wanted to get that on my system. So thanks for hearing me on that.
Not a problem, man. This is definitely making this
what was her last name?
One of the Jenny more powerful episodes we'll have recorded.
Yeah. If you look up Jenny Williams, she was on a podcast called Game on Glio podcast early on. Her married name is now Jenny Lee, and her Facebook name is like it might still be Jenny DeBlue, but it's like a pseudonym. But yeah, I think if you search for Jenny Williams on Game on Glio, there's a really cool podcast, and there's a little bit of information below the podcast notes that tells a little bit more. Her dad also had the same disease she did, which is just insane, and the same complication at the end. Yeah.
One moment, let me. If this is the correct one, I'll include it in the show notes. Is this her?
Yes, and that looks like her husband there.
Yeah, said this story was submitted by Sam Lee.
So I haven't seen that one, but that would be wonderful, I'm sure. And she's stayed very active in the brain cancer community. She did this thing called Head for the Hill, which is a charity event where brain cancer patients go to DC to talk to representatives to get funding for brain cancer research and stuff like that, which is just like a wonderful thing that the patients take it into their own hands to trying to be active and their fight with brain cancer as like on a bigger scale.
Yeah, I'll be sure to include this in the show notes. They are. It looks like it was from the notes. It was something they put up during COVID, or at least some of the conversation that made it into the notes was battling through during COVID and such like that. but it looks like, they're still taking donations for, fighting brain cancer in general. So I will definitely include that.
Yeah, let's definitely include that. I mean, I just appreciate you sharing that and feeling comfortable with that, because honestly, I think this event is this type of thing more than what we're used to at the poker tournament. Like, it's highlighting the people that are actually a part of our community that may not always be out there traveling from stop to stop, playing for a living. And I'm just really glad you're out there, man. Good luck.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm going to try my best, that's for sure. We put a lot of effort in. I kind of consider this, and it doesn't really have to be this, but it's like my one last hurrah into poker, like live poker. I don't imagine myself going to a lot more like live poker things.
I think that's an unfortunate reality that you have to accept for yourself as a possibility, and take it in as much as you can, and enjoy that dirty Vegas sidewalk, and just appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah. Be sure to tag, post a lot if you can, and tag us in your posts.
Sure, for sure.
Pod on Twitter.
If it works, if it doesn't, that we'll find them.
Yeah, we'll keep adding those updates to the show notes also.
Sounds great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Anything else on your mind? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes here.
I would recommend maybe get like some sort of liquid IV or Gatorade or something, so you don't get cramps out there. That's super common.
I would love a liquid IV, but I don't know if I would go for that. But I'm going to try to stay hydrated. I think that's the number one thing is for me is just try to stay hydrated, which I struggle with.
It's a lot when you're used to Florida. It's harder when you're out there, I've noticed.
Yeah, I get dehydrated anyway, and then it's like if I forget to drink, I'm not going to drink, and I have stomach problems, so it's also hard to like just force yourself to drink.
So pacing yourself is actually really important.
Yeah, exactly. I can't just be like, now chug of water. It has to be like, all right, you gotta keep sipping type thing. Yeah, no, exactly. That's a great point is staying hydrated, and I think resting at the right moments too.
And there's a little bit of unfortunate reality that everybody ends up with a bad beach story other than the winner, right? So the guy that gets 10th is miserable. The guy that gets 15th is miserable. The guy that gets 22nd is miserable. The guy that gets 34th is miserable. So
the guy that gets second.
The guy, I mean, to some degree, you're right. So you're probably, unless you win the whole thing, you're probably going to have a little bit of pain, and just understand that you've already accepted that part, right? That's already happened. Right?
Yeah, no, I'm cool with whatever, and I know it's gonna hurt, like you're saying, like you're gonna be like, oh, I regret this, regret that, but it's not a big deal. I'm really happy.
Do the best you can, man. I'm looking forward to seeing your results. Yep. I'm really gonna cheer you on.
Definitely.
Anything else you want to touch on before we bounce out of here?
There's a joke I keep making that nobody quite gets, but I think I'm the only one that's minus EV in the free roll. Also, it's the biggest buy-in tournament that I've played in the last year, so. All that's just silliness.
You've got this.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for you.
100%. Okay, you're right. You're playing a free roll. It's the biggest tournament you'd play of the year. I'll still buy you at more than face if you want to sell some.
Yeah, $0 for
right. So,
but yeah, I appreciate the support. It was great to talk to you guys.
Good to meet you, JB.
Yeah, you guys as well, or you as well, and Mike, good to hear from you again.
Have a good one, my friend. Take care.